Hi again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of my favorite 400 sports cards. This is Red from Half Century Collecting Sports Cards. Here you can see the featured cards from last week. And we'll move the camera to get to, we are now at card number 301. And that is a 1888 old tobacco card from the Allen and Ginter set of a recognizable name, Charles Kamsky. Now this 1887 season that he was coming off of, he was a 27-year-old player manager. It was his third year managing already. He was mostly a speedy first baseman, played some second base, some outfield for a 95-40 St. Louis Browns team that ended up going to the World Series against the Detroit Wolverines, but losing 10 games to 5. This season, he was one of the few guys ever to post 100 RBIs and 100 stolen bases. He had 117 in the same season. But as a player, he was just a career 7.6 WAR guy, so not a Hall of Famer by his playing. But as a manager, in 12 seasons, had over a 600 win percentage. And then what he really got into the Hall for was being a baseball pioneer. Because after retirement, he bought a team in the Western League in Sioux City, Iowa. Moved that team eventually to St. Paul. And then in 1900, when the American League started, he moved that team to Chicago and called the team the White Sox in honor basically of the old Chicago White Stockings teams that featured guys like Cap Anson and King Kelly, John Clarkson. And then in 1901, the American League became part of the major leagues along with the National League. In 1910, they moved into a new ballpark, which is Kamsky Park. And then he built some really good teams in the teens with players like Big Ed Walsh, Eddie Seacott, Ray Schalk, Buck Weaver, Red Faber, Joe Jackson, and Eddie Collins. And then in 1917, ended up winning the World Series. And I have a t-shirt that I bought, I think somewhere in the 80s or 90s, at Kamsky Park when I was visiting there, and it says on it 1917 World Series champs, because that at the time was the last time they had won a World Series. Then in 1918 they faltered a little bit, but in 1919 rebounded, had a really good team, great players, were favored to win the World Series, but as you all know, that was the 8-man out season, and Kamsky was probably getting a little cheap, and some players didn't like it, and ended up with some bookies, gamblers, taking money and throwing the World Series. It kind of led to the decline a little bit of the White Sox. They lost out in 1920 to the Cleveland Indians, and then the team kind of gradually got a little worse. And but Kamsky kept owning them till his death in 1931, when it was passed down in his family, and he got elected into the Hall of Fame already in 1939. So you can see the back of that Allen and Ginter card. There were 10 baseball players featured in that tobacco set, and you can see there were pugilists and oarsmen, wrestlers, billiards players. Cool old card. All right, next we have a card that I think just looks really cool. The middle of his youth. He's actually kind of became a star already by this time. He's a 28-year-old in this 62 season, and that is Hank Aaron. And I'm going to put up his all-star card too, because I like that card as well, kind of to go with it. But Aaron, by this 62 season, was 6th in MVP voting. 45 homers, 128 ribbies, 323 average, had over a 1,000 OPS, 8.5 WAR, which is tied for his 4th highest. So 62. I keep flipping those. 62 is always the wrong way. The back for Hank Aaron. All right, next. A name you won't expect on there, but a real good player. I think a pretty cool card. He's got a 67 shared rookie card, but the 68 cool with the All-Star Rookie trophy there. He had a career 65 WAR, which is almost as good as a more famous Reggie contemporary of his, who ended up with 74, Reggie Jackson. And Smith actually has one of the highest WAR totals not in the Hall of Fame. He was a really good player. He was an all-star a couple seasons in Boston, then was an all-star a couple seasons in St. Louis. That's where it was kind of the early to mid-70s when I got to know him when I was a big Cardinals fan. And then ended up with the Dodgers, where he had 3 more all-star seasons, and including that 1977 season, when he actually led the NL with a 427 on base percentage, led the NL in OPS plus, and he was, show this, 77, one of 4 Dodgers to hit over 30 home runs in the same season. So 68, Reggie Smith. Next we have, I'm going to have to slide back on this one. One of the tall boy cards from 1976. And that is of Earl the Pearl Monroe. Now, I first heard about the Pearl from my 7th grade basketball coach, who talked about playing this guy. He was Division II player in college, and he talked about having to guard this guy who averaged 40 points a game. And I don't think I believed him a whole lot when he was telling the story, but he talked about him. He talked about Earl Monroe. And then I looked, back, because when I was 7th grade, I guess I would have been 77, so this is just 1 year prior, so I probably had this card fairly new at the time. Look back, and what I like about these cards, they show their college records, and I look back, and sure enough, he averaged 41.5 points a game as a senior in college. Just incredible. Found out his team ended up winning the D2 title, and then he had quite a career in the NBA afterwards. First with the Baltimore Bullets, and then with the New York Knicks. Won a title with Walt Frazier, one of the best guard combos probably of all time, with him and Frazier, and eventually elected to the Hall of Fame, one of the top 50 players of all time in the NBA, Earl Monroe. All right, next we've got the all-time hit king, and I picked this 74 card just because I think it's kind of cool. Cool Reds. These Reds in action cards in 74 I thought were pretty cool. I'm going to show Reds in action cards from 74. Even the manager kind of got an in action card there in Sparky Anderson. See Concepcion fielding that throw probably from Johnny Bench. Joe Morgan's cool card, benches. A couple starting pitchers, and then the 2 relievers kind of got cool cards. But back to Rose, who this 74 season, he's actually coming off an MVP season of 73, where he got on base over 300 times, had an over 400 on base percentage, and he's kind of in the middle of this 12 straight years of over 700 plate appearances, which I think is just unreal. In this season, 74, he broke the Major League record for plate appearances with 771. Since then, it's been passed by Lenny Dykstra and Jimmy Rollins. And even though he's already 33 years old on this card, he's going to play 12 more seasons in the majors. So, Pete Rose. All right, now we're going back to the Gaudies. It's a 1933 Gaudi of Freddy Lindstrom. Now, Fred is got one of the lower career WARs of any Hall of Famer. He ended up with 28.7. When he started, he was a great third baseman. He actually came up at age 18 that year against the Washington Senators and Walter Johnson. In a losing cause, he had 10 hits in the World Series with a .333 average. And then later, by age 24, he already had 2 seasons of 231 hits. He was second in the MVP voting in 1928. But then he fizzled out really quick, and already by age 30, in 1936, he was out of baseball. Finished his career with 1,741 hits, 102 homers, and a .311 average. But I think it's kind of a cool card. Got a nice little smile showing his follow through. And there you can see the back of that 33 Gaudy. And then last on the list is cool card, I think, of a 57 Roberto Clemente. 57s are known for the big pictures. You know, all they've got is border, you know, the white borders, and then all the words are within the picture. And then you show within that a really good close-up of a nice smiling Roberto Clemente. And I just think that ends up with a really cool looking card. He's just 22 years old, that 57 season. And this probably was his worst season, this 57 year. He only hit 253 with 4 homers. The Pirates were bad, 62 and 92. But even with that, had a cool card. He was coming off a decent year, though. His second year there, hit 311. So, Roberto Clemente. And then with that, I've got to show an open pack again. So, let's do that here. From 1957. Try to get the glare out of there. So that's what a 1957 Topps pack looked like. There's only 16 regular graded packs from PSA. This one happens to have the lowest grade of any of them at a 4. But I don't know, it doesn't look that bad to me. I'm not sure why I got a 4. I got a 55 pack that got grade of 5 that looks a lot worse, I think, than this one. So, still think that's pretty cool. And who knows, maybe there's something like that with a lot fresher borders and color and everything within that pack. I don't know if I will ever know. Maybe I will. All right, that's all we got for today. These are the featured cards, and we will see you again next week. Take care, everybody.